This is the Music History In-Depth podcast for November 6th through the 12th. This week, a top-selling album gets released, a trend-setting music video is filmed, and two Canadian music legends are born. The album that we are going to spotlight this week is from a group that started off as the New Yardbirds. Here's what happened. In 1968, the Yardbirds were on their last legs. They played what they thought was their last gig in July and then realized that they still had a few concerts that they were contractually obligated to play in Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Half the band was already onto other projects, so they authorized the remaining members to get new members, but to use the name the Yardbirds when performing. Guitarist Jimmy Page and bassist Chris Dreja went looking for a lead singer and found one in Terry Reid. He, however, said no, and said to instead try a guy by the name of Robert Plant. Plant said yes, and since the group still needed a drummer, they brought John Bonham on board. Dreja then decided to quit to become a photographer, another Pete Best Award winner for leaving a band before it became popular. Dreja would pop up later in the band's story in a not-so-good way. Bassist John Paul Jones came to them and asked to join, so with that lineup at hand, they went off and did the final gigs as the New Yardbirds. Once they were done playing their original gigs, they decided to keep going as a group and record an album together. They recorded and mixed the album at Olympic Studios in London in October 1968. The reason why it didn't take too long to record, according to Page, was that most of the songs had already been tested and rehearsed during the tour in Scandinavia. Page covered the costs of the studio, which may also be another reason why it only took 36 hours of studio time to record it. Then, with the album in hand, they went shopping for a record deal. They had the upper hand in negotiations, and they knew it. They negotiated a sweetheart of a deal with Atlantic Records that gave them copyright control and also control over every aspect of publicity. They released the album on January 12, 1969 to not-so-good reviews, much like most albums that become classics. Also, like many classics, it didn't matter what the critics said about the album to the public still loved it. It became a huge hit. The critics would eventually come around. In fact, Rolling Stone magazine, who's originally hated the album, eventually made it their 29th greatest album of all time. There was just one problem, though, the band's name. They were going to go out on tour with the name the New Yardbirds, but received a cease and desist order from former member Chris Dreja. Told you he'd be back. The band would get their name, according to whichever legend you want to go with, from either Bob Dylan or members of The Who or whoever, who said that the band would go over like a Led Zeppelin. Well, that was wrong. Their first album would go on to sell over 10 million copies and go top 10 in 5 different countries, including America. The album that had the now classics Good Times, Bad Times, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, Dazed and Confused, I Can't Quit You, Baby, and Communication Breakdown, of course, was called Led Zeppelin I. Led Zeppelin II was heavier, and according to the band, was when the group really started playing well. The mastermind behind the album that time was Jimmy, of course. He made sure everybody stayed on track, and the album was written and recorded while the band was on tour between April and August of 1969. Robert Plant, in retrospect, wasn't too thrilled with that due to some of the recording studios that they were forced to record in while on tour. That album, Led Zeppelin II, was released on October 22nd of that year. When Led Zeppelin III came out, it performed okay, but the critics again were at best lukewarm to the album, much like Led Zeppelin I and II. For the fourth album, they decided not to even call it Led Zeppelin IV. They simply put 4 symbols on the album cover. The guys decided not to do any more touring and to concentrate on recording this time. They went to the English countryside to a place called Headley Garage. They also took a mobile recording studio with them and got down to business with Jimmy Page back at the helm. The mobile studio was good for capturing ideas while they jammed together. Plus, there was no pub near the country studio, so they didn't have their usual distractions of beer, women, etc., etc. The album had their customary 2 officially released singles. As with every Led Zeppelin album, all of the songs became hits. Black Dog was named after a black dog that used to hang around the studio and was the first single released. Rock and Roll was also released as a single and came out of one of those jam sessions that they did back in the mobile studio. The Battle of Evermore was based on the Scottish Independence Wars. Stairway to Heaven is also known as the DJ bathroom break song because of its length. It's also part of a lawsuit that was filed by another group named Spirit, who claimed that the beginning of the song was stolen from them. That lawsuit has since been dismissed by the United States Supreme Court, although it felt like it took forever to do it, about a couple decades. Misty Mountain Hop is about cops and student protesters, and the title is based on J.R.R. Tolkien. Four Sticks is based on a drum pattern that John Bonham did. Going to California is about California earthquakes. When the Levee Breaks was actually recorded first in 1929. When Led Zeppelin IV, as it's now known as, was released on November 8, 1971, it had already been delayed. The album was supposed to come out in April. Led Zeppelin IV went straight to number 1 in America and top 10 in 8 different countries. It sold over 16 million certified copies in America, making it one of the biggest selling albums of all time. There are 4 symbols on the album cover representing the 4 band members. Some people call it the 4 Symbols album. Most people simply know it as Led Zeppelin IV, the classic album that was released on November 8, 1971. Before we continue, we'd like to tell you about the Music History Today podcast, where we go over the events that happened on that particular day in music history. The Music History Today podcast drops every single day, including weekends, on this podcast network. Now, back to the Music History In-Depth podcast. Back in the late 1960s, while in art college, young Farouk Bulsara became friends with bassist Tim Staffel, who was in a band called Smile. Farouk became a fan of the band and ended up joining them when Staffel left the band to form another band. Farouk joined the band and did 2 name changes. The first was that he persuaded the rest of the members of the band, guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor, to change their name from Smile to Queen. The second was that Farouk Bulsara changed his name to Freddie Mercury. Queen played with different bassists for a couple of years until they found the perfect bassist in John Deacon. In 1973, the band signed a record deal and released their debut album, Queen. The critics liked the progressive metal sound of the band, but the public didn't find the album, even with the now well-known lead single from that album, Keep Yourself Alive. Their second album, Queen II, also found success, both with critics and the general public this time. That album had the classic 7 Seas of Rye. In 1974, the band released Sheer Heart Attack, which gave them even bigger success with songs like Killer Queen, Now I'm Here, and Stone Cold Crazy. Album number 4 came around in 1975. A Night at the Opera became a worldwide smash. The album had the hits Love of My Life, You're My Best Friend, and another song that would chart top 10 3 times in America, the second time with the help of a movie about 2 kids with a cable access television show, and the third time with the help of an Academy Award-winning performance. According to historians, some of the ideas for the song Bohemian Rhapsody were formulated in the late 1960s, especially the beginning part about the singer in the song talking about the fact that he just killed a man. The song, all planned out by Freddie beforehand, starts with a 49-second intro, then goes into an almost 2-minute ballad, then Brian May's 25-second guitar solo, then the 1-minute opera that everyone and their grandmother loved singing, and then a quick little 47 seconds rock portion and has a 1-minute ending. All totaled, it is a 5-minute, 55-second mini rock opera about a guy who accidentally killed a man, sold his soul to the devil, then calls God to help save him, of course. That would be the opera portion in the center. The band started recording the song in late August 1975 and took about 3 weeks to record it. They had rehearsed it 3 weeks beforehand. They layered over 100 different tracks onto the song, but Brian May's guitar solo is all him, one track only. The music video itself is pretty important, as it turns out. The now famous music video for the song was filmed on November 10th, 1975. The band filmed it at Elstree Studios, where they were rehearsing for their upcoming tour at the time. The video only cost 4,500 British pounds to make. According to music video director Bruce Gowers, the video only took 4 hours to shoot. Cameraman Barry Dodd and assistant director Jim McCutcheon did all of the special effects while they were filming the video. Unlike other videos, the effects were not done during editing. One of the reasons why the music video was done was so that the band didn't have to do the song on the popular British music television show Top of the Pops, mainly because they knew that they couldn't do a lot of the singing parts live, and since they were lip-syncing, they also didn't want to look stupid on stage doing it. The music video became a trendsetter, as its success ushered in a new era of music videos, as many bands started doing them soon thereafter. The record label, as you can imagine, was not exactly pleased with a 6-minute song when they heard it and then saw the music video for it. They thought it didn't fit into their cookie-cutter 4 minutes or less corporate radio world, so the band took the song to Capitol Radio DJ Kenny Everett, who played it. He teased it first by playing little bits of it until the public wanted more. It then got picked up by other radio stations, and after that, Queen's record label, Elektra Records, released the song on October 31st, 1975. The song, Bohemian Rhapsody, became a huge hit, especially in England. In America, it went top 10. The song also sold over 6 million copies worldwide. The music video that was made for the song is also considered a template for how music videos were made back in the 1970s. The song has been popularized a few more times. The first was, of course, during the unfortunate early death of Freddie Mercury back in 1991. The second was when a movie called Wayne's World, about two guys who had a cable access television show, used the song in the now famous headbanging scene in the car. By the way, the song that was supposed to have been used for that scene was actually Guns N' Roses' song, but I guess Guns N' Roses said no, so they went with Queen, and the rest is history. The third was a few years ago when the band's biopic Bohemian Rhapsody, with a Best Actor Academy Award winning performance by Rami Malek as the late great Freddie Mercury, took the song back to the top 10. The music video for that song you just can't stop banging your head to, and introduced a generation to an opera of sorts. Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, filmed on November 10th, 1975. Our two birthdays this week both hail from the Great White North. This first Canadian artist was born on November 7th, 1943. She also moved to America in the 1960s. She is known as one of the greatest songwriters, male or female, of all time. Her songs mix romance and longing with social, political, and environmental themes. Her album, Blue, is considered one of the greatest albums ever. In fact, NPR ranked it as the greatest album ever made by a woman. Joni Mitchell, born Roberta Joan Anderson in 1943, has carved out a unique path through the music industry, we'll say. Not as a product, but as an artistic force that was shaped by, well, essentially what she went through in life. Her journey as a child in rural Canada, an avid painter who survived polio, to the folk icon that she is now, and finally a jazz pioneer, reveals an artist who is constantly evolving. Joni's life has been defined by a commitment to her art, literally art, not just music, a journey that has been marked by personal challenges and a parallel life as a visual artist that continues to this day. Joni grew up in Saskatchewan, where she ended up getting polio at the age of 9. That was an illness that left her with a weakened left hand and also spurred her to develop the unique custom guitar tunings that she ended up getting her signature sound from, all because of polio. Who knew? While her mother pushed her towards music, her first love was always painting, which, after a brief and disappointing stint at an art college, would still remain an obsession and often a refuge for what she ended up having to go through. This dual artistic identity, the songwriter and the painter, would define her creative process, with her music becoming a canvas for her vivid, often painful details of her life. A heartbreaking secret from her early career, the forced adoption of her daughter in 1965, severely impacted her songwriting, leaving an indelible mark on her confessional lyrics. In the late 1960s, Joni emerged from the folk scene, propelled by her poetic lyrical style and also a visual delivery that was at once pristine and also extremely honest. Her relocation from Canada to the epicenter of the New York Greenwich Village folk music scene, and then later to the West Coast, specifically California's Laurel Canyon, placed her at the heart of the counterculture, though her artistic drive set her apart from the usual commercial expectations of the folk revival at that time. While others had hits covering her songs, Joni built her own legacy with albums like Blue, which was an extremely confessional masterpiece that set a new standard for honest, intimate songwriting. She refused to be confined to the folk music placement that everybody had her in. She ended up also going into jazz and pop music with albums like Court and Spark, and she also collaborated with jazz legends like Charles Mingus, and also a bassist who is considered to be the greatest bassist to ever live, Jaco Pastorius. Her move into jazz, by the way, definitely alienated her early fans, much the way that Bob Dylan going electric would eventually end up creating a lot of backlash to his acoustic fans. Nevertheless, Joni stuck to her guns and made a career of it. Throughout her musical exploration, she never abandoned her first love of painting. She was often the visual artist on her album covers and describes herself as a painter derailed by circumstance, a testament to the enduring importance of art to her. Following a period of self-retirement, her later life has been marked by significant health struggles, including brain aneurysm back in 2015, which left her unable to walk or talk. And yet, because of how tough her life was and also what she has gone through, she began that arduous journey of recovery, painstakingly relearning all of her custom guitar tunings. This process culminated in her astonishing return to the stage at the Newport Folk Festival back in 2022, which was a defiant performance that captured the imagination of a new generation and reaffirmed her status as a singular and enduring artistic voice. Joni Mitchell's career is not merely a collection of her hit songs. It is a testament to the artist's unwavering commitment to just following your own path. Doesn't matter where it goes. The woman who has put down some amazing music, including the classic album Blue. A big happy birthday to Miss Joni Mitchell, who was born on November 7th, 1943. Our next Canadian is a jack of all trades of sorts. Neil Young was born on November 12th, 1945. He has been called the godfather of grunge, simply because of the way he distorted his guitar sound. He is originally from Canada and was in a band with Rick James called the Minor Birds. Yeah, you heard that right. Rick James, the king of punk funk, the super freak, and give it to me baby, and all that from way back in the day, as they say. And Neil Young, the godfather of grunge, were once in a band together. Let that marinate in your brain for just a hot second. That was back in Toronto, by the way, because Rick James was from Buffalo and would often go up to Toronto. In any event, James got arrested for being AWOL from the Navy Reserve. It was the 1960s, after all, and the draft was in full swing, Vietnam and all that. So Neil quit the Minor Birds and moved to California by the mid-1960s. By the way, Neil came to the U.S. illegally until 1970 when he finally got his green card. Let that one sink in. Just letting you know. During that time, Neil formed the legendary group Buffalo Springfield with Stephen Stills. Neil would then go on to form his own band, Crazy Horse, before reteaming with Stephen Stills to form Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Neil still did albums with Crazy Horse, though. In fact, he released his first solo album, Neil Young, in 1969. And then his next solo album, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, was released later in 1969 and is the first official album with Crazy Horse. Neil and Crazy Horse got together after a short tour to work on the next album. That next album was originally supposed to be the soundtrack for a movie written by Dean Stockwell called After the Gold Rush. The movie never got made, and the screenplay has supposedly been lost for decades now. In any event, the group recorded for a little while at Sunset Sound Studio in Los Angeles and managed to get 2 songs completed, Oh Lonesome Me and Believe in You. And then Neil decided that he wanted to go in a completely different direction, so he, in effect, fired the band. He shifted gears, went home to Topanga Canyon, California, and there he set up a small studio in his basement that could only fit a few people. He got his CSNY bandmate, Stephen Stills, and the group's bassist, Greg Reeves, together. He also brought in Ralph Molina from Crazy Horse, along with teenage guitarist Nils Lofgren. Nils would later go on to become a permanent member of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. The group recorded songs like the new classic Southern Man, After the Gold Rush, Cripple Creek Ferry, Don't Let Me Bring You Down, and Only Love Can Break Your Heart, which went to number 33 on the Billboard Singles Chart. And when that album arrived in September 19th, 1970, it was received with, well, not so great reactions, you might say. As with a lot of albums, though, that the critics don't like, the public enjoyed it, taking it all the way up to number 8 on the Billboard Albums chart. Its reputation only grew after that, to the point where now the album, After the Gold Rush, is considered one of the greatest albums of all time. In 1971, Neil started an acoustic tour and had planned to do a live acoustic album to go with it. Fate, however, intervened. During the tour, Neil stopped off in Nashville to do a taping of the Johnny Cash television show. During his time in Nashville, he received a call from Elliot Mazer, who owned Quadraphonic Sound Studios in the city. Mazer asked if Young wanted to use his studio to record the new material that Neil had been working on. Neil said sure and went into the studio to record. Mazer got some country music studio musicians to sit in, along with Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor, to do backup vocals, since both Ronstadt and Taylor were in town to tape segments for Cash's show as well. Neil liked the results so much that he eventually went out on tour with the country musicians, now nicknamed the Stray Gators, and scrapped plans for the live acoustic album. Then Neil went back to California, recorded some more songs in his barn there. He also had some recording sessions in New York with Crosby, Stills, and Nash doing guest vocals, and with the London Symphony Orchestra participating on a couple of tracks. That finished album, called Harvest, was released on February 2nd, 1972. Among the tracks were a live acoustic version of Needle and the Damage Done about artists who were dealing with substance demons and was inspired by Crazy Horse member Danny Whitten, who was battling those demons at the time. There was also Heart of Gold and Alabama, which inspired Lynyrd Skynyrd to record Sweet Home Alabama in response to what the band felt was an insult to the people of Alabama, and name-checked Neil Young in a not-so-nice way in the song. Neil would go on to make other great albums like Rust Never Sleeps, Harvest Moon, Freedom, Ragged Glory, Long May You Run, and Mirror Ball with Pearl Jam. He's won at least 2 Grammy Awards, co-founded Farm Aid, and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once as a solo artist and once with Buffalo Springfield. A big happy birthday to the man who keeps on rocking in the free world, Mr. Neil Young, born November 12th, 1945. And that is it for the Music History In-Depth podcast for November 6th through the 12th. Thank you very, very much for listening and or watching if you're on YouTube or Spotify.